about the impact of accessible and subversive art on students. My name is Sarah Gechter, and today we're going to be talking about how to address how you can take care of the needs of your school and your community wherever you teach or wherever you work with art learners through collaborative work, specifically looking at graffiti and street art and bringing those professionals into your classroom to make a more meaningful connection in your community. Can everyone in the back hear me? We're good? Thumbs up? Thank you. If you have any questions, either in the handout or about anything that I'm saying at any time, flag me down. That's totally fine with me. I won't be weird about it. Cool. So just to get you started, this is a little bit about me and my school community. I teach 7th grade specifically, just 7th grade. And most of my 7th graders, when they come in, they have never taken an art class before. I teach in the Pico Union, Los Angeles neighborhood. It's a small community, very dense community, and really homogenous. 93% Hispanic in my school specifically, 7% African American, 24% of our students are ELLs, and 97% of our students are free or reduced lunch. We are very fortunate. We do have a great access to technology. All classrooms have an iPad cart, and all classrooms have either an Eno board or a smart board. So we are very rich in technological resources, where we may lack them in some other places, like art supplies. These are my beautiful, amazing students. I have my art club right down here. They're just super cute. I know middle school is not for everyone. I love my middle schoolers. They're the best. They're really happy and they just love creating art, especially for those of them that haven't really had an opportunity to do anything like that before. So just to give you kind of a little bit of a background of where I'm coming from, how I'm addressing this topic. Obviously, we're all very different educators, and we're going to address this very differently based on who we are, our comforts, and who our schools are. But I hope that today you can take a little bit to bring back to whoever your adorable kiddos may be. So just to get us started, I would like you, and I know we're kind of spread out, but you can lean over. I would like you to turn to someone and share your name, where you're from, what level you teach, how long you've been teaching, and what are some needs that you see in your community. Think micro needs. It can be something really simple. It can be something huge. We all know, teachers, we have lots of huge needs in our communities, but think something simple just to start off with. Give us like 2 minutes. Go ahead. So, just a rundown of what we're talking about today. Main topics, we're going to be looking at accessibility. How can you make this content accessible to whoever you are and whoever your students are? A framework for planning success when you are going to incorporate this into your classroom with your students or non-classroom. And the impact, ultimately looking at the impact, wrapping it up, figuring out why is it important to do this in the first place? What am I going to get out of it? What are my kids going to get out of it? And reflecting. I'm going to give you some time at the end, hopefully, if I time it out right, to start doing a little of your own development using the worksheet handout that I've given you. Are there any questions, just to start off? Okay. So I did this activity myself, and I kind of looked at some of the needs in my community specifically. So these are the needs. I chose 3 main needs that I saw in my own community, and these are the actions that I kind of came up with to counteract these needs. I'm not saying this is perfect and this is the only way to identify and counteract these needs, because obviously you can approach things in a million different ways and have a million different results. This is just what I did. So one of the needs that I found in my community was that my students have really, really low self-esteem and self-worth, particularly with my girls. I have found that this is kind of common in the Latino culture where I am teaching because of kind of like the gender dynamics just that exist in that area. So to address that need, I thought it would be important to address the gender gap, like be really open with those girls, talk about it with everyone in my community, girls, boys, and everyone in between, talking about the cultural expectations of women that they're seeing in their world around them and the expectations that we have for them in our school. And then providing them with strong female role models and focusing on autodidactic themes. Really like self-improvement, how can you get yourself from point A to point B, how can you rise up and kind of nourish your inner beauty and self and empower yourself in a way. Another need that I found in my school community was that students-to-students relationships were negative. And I think that this was like on a really big spectrum. It went from just like students not wanting to work together in class because Miss, she touched me, or she's looking at me wrong, or she talked about me the other day, to like larger things where like cliques were starting to get together. These things happen in middle school a lot, but I noticed that it was becoming particularly volatile and I didn't want that to continue. So to address that need, we built some conflict resolution into the classroom. We created like community agreements within our classroom, talking about how we expect each other to be treated and what we wanted our interpersonal connections to look like, and then practicing and celebrating those in the classroom. You'll see how we kind of take that and put it into ERT. And the last one that I addressed was that students didn't really feel a very strong connection to school, and particularly to art class. A lot of students in my class had the viewpoint that like school sucks and I'm just gonna like go as high as I need to and then I'm going to get out as soon as I can. Obviously not all of them, but a lot of them were. They had a really negative connection to school. They really didn't like being there. They just wanted to get out. So we focused in response to that, looking at team building, working in collaborative groups, focusing on the power of togetherness and kind of what we can accomplish through that. So I would like to talk a little bit about accessibility because I think that especially as teachers, right, we take these bigger ideas, things that are happening in society, and we kind of like digest all of it and push it out to our students in a way that makes sense to them. And that can be damaging in some ways if it gets a little too distorted. So I think that especially when we're talking about a topic like this, we need to be really, really mindful of what this accessibility looks like, and that we're not changing the content so much that it's almost like a bastardization of that content. Oh guys, Steve Locke. If any of you were in here and saw him the other day, this is amazing. I like immediately went through and added it to my slide. He said two things that had to do with accessibility that kind of align with the way that I'm thinking about it here. He said, access means having the freedom to be a complete person. Oh gosh. He also said that children become artists when they have free access to culture. So the accessibility that I'm talking about right now is providing them access to the culture in the way that it was meant to be consumed, in a way that is natural, in a way that is not changing it and repackaging it in a way that's more comfortable for us necessarily, and then giving them that access freely within a framework to make sure we're doing it responsibly and that our students aren't immediately going to go like tagging up the school, right? Because that kind of access is really, really inspiring to them. With that kind of access comes the ability for them to like soar and become the kinds of artists that they want to be. Two main ways that I create access in my classroom for my students. I choose work really purposefully that they can relate to. That's why I so gravitate towards graffiti and street art. Subversive art, it's like a magnet. It's edgy. Students are kind of not sure what to think about it. And it's like really naturally elicited for them, and it's everywhere. It's everywhere for them to see. So choosing work that they relate to is the first way that I do this. The second way is by physically bringing the artist to them. I don't think there's any better way than getting an artist, a professional working artist, and bringing them into your classroom. 2 years ago, I brought in this artist, Thrash, and I'll talk about him later, but he is a very anonymous artist. He like covers up his face whenever he does anything. No one knows his true name. And I taught about him for about a month, and then brought him in, and the students were like, oh my God, is he gonna cover his face? Is he gonna tell us his name? Who is this? They were literally like busting my door down to like get a look at this amazing artist who's making cool stuff, and we don't know who he is. So bringing the artist to them like naturally gets them excited. It's almost got this like celebrity aspect to it. And I don't see any better way to make that kind of art and art making by physically bringing the artist in. Okay, so when you are planning to do something like that Thrash bird thing I just talked about, bringing an artist into your classroom, I've created these 6 steps for success to make sure that you are not taking someone's artwork that you saw on Pinterest and you're creating something with different materials in a slightly different way with a totally different meaning, and you're letting your kids make it and post it on Instagram. So if you have the handout, now would be a really great time to take a look at the back. So I've broken this whole process down into 6 steps, and on your worksheet they appear as I will statements. First one, I will develop a clear understanding of my mission. What are you trying to do? What do you want your students to do? How are you going to do it? Next one, I will make a strong connection with a professional. This is, in my opinion, one of the easier ways. A lot of people find it challenging. Hopefully we can debunk some of the myths with this and make it a little easier for you. Third one, I will prepare my students. Nothing worse than having a professional come into your classroom. You give the kids the supplies and they look at you with blank faces. That's super embarrassing. Fourth one, organizing the logistics of the day so everything goes super smoothly. 5, documenting and sharing the collaboration. And 6, reflecting on the impact of the experience. That's my favorite one. So for each of these, I've given you a few different things to kind of think about. And I'm gonna give you 1 minute just to skim through that now. So you get an idea of what I'm thinking about for each of these 6 steps. Go ahead and do that now. When all of these steps are followed through, and especially when you go through each of those steps really, really thoughtfully, and you're thinking about who is impacting, how it's impacting them, your results afterward are so much more thoughtful. The planning stresses you out a lot less, stresses out the artist a lot less, and it stresses out your students a lot less. Yes?
First of all, I know that the artist that have a mask or anything?
No, he didn't. He revealed his face, but he didn't tell the kids his real name.
He didn't use a voice box?
Nope.
Here's a question directly related to the 6.
Sure.
I noticed that it really has no place where you address bringing sometimes a controversial or subversive artist to a school with an administration, and that has to be probably the first hurdle. I've done it with several performers who come to my school. Mm-hmm. First hurdle, especially if they have explicit content or stuff that is can be deemed done illegally. Mm-hmm. So then how do you clear that with your administrators?
Great question, thank you. So actually, in the second one, if you address your attention to the second one, I will make a strong connection with a professional. I'm specifically choosing an artist that I know is going to be the right match for my community. So in my community, with my administrators personally, they don't really care about that. They're okay if I bring in someone who makes work illegally, because I talk about that with the students, and all that is kind of presented to them up front as it is. So they're okay with me doing that. And I know that that might be uncommon. Maybe your administrators will be uncomfortable with that, and that's why that step 2 is so important, because then you would choose an artist that would better reflect the values in your community with your administrators in your school. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it really depends on the administration and the area. I didn't contact artists.
Me
like if you're
personally?
living in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, so there are a lot of artists, especially not as, I guess, publicized or well-known graffiti and street artists who are like, they want to get themselves out there. They view this as almost like a publicity opportunity, especially like working with children. Look at how nice I am. I'm working with these wonderful children. I'm so great. You should hire me to do your beautiful mural. So like I've found personally a lot of artists are really, really excited to come in. I've gotten a really good response from the artists that I've specifically chosen. But if you are in a more rural area or somewhere where maybe there isn't as much access, I think choosing an artist that is a little less in the mainstream would be a really good way to go, because I think they would be a lot more enthusiastic about getting their name out and getting their work out. Any other questions? Thank you. Sure.
Do you mostly have artists from the LA area coming in, or do you have people coming in from all over? So like I live in the middle of nowhere in Ohio. Like I'm kind of thinking, who's going to come to my school?
I think you'd be surprised, honestly, if you try. So the artists that I choose who have work locally that the students have recognized. That's kind of why I chose them in the first place. But a lot of the artists that I have brought in do create work internationally. If you think about it, like, and specifically for like really rural areas, think about trains. Think about like big freight cars, they're covered, right? The reason why artists cover like, what's the word I'm looking for? The containers, the shipping containers, right? Is so that they can get their artwork crossing through towns in the middle of nowhere that might not have as much access. They're interested in getting their message out. That's kind of like a huge part of this style of art making. It's subversive, it's underground. They want it to kind of like trickle into society in a natural kind of way. So I think that those artists, if you could think about the largest city that's near you, right? Even if it's kind of far away. I do think artists, because they're so used to spreading their artwork wherever it goes, they would still be willing to go out to your school wherever it would be. It would give you a little bit of extra work to do, just because you would have to do your due diligence and your research to choose someone really, really specifically that would be able to do that. I think it's really, really important to consider who you're bringing in and what kind of art you want to be talking about and what art you are comfortable talking about, and making sure that that artist kind of fits that mold for you. Because when students have full access to artists and artwork that they have a personal connection to, whether it's like an artist that you're bringing in from your community, or someone that has work that they've seen before, or someone who went to the school even, they're able to begin thinking about the world and themselves in a new and uninhibited way. This is kind of something that Amy Sherrill talked about. If you got to see her talk, like she had a moment where she was exposed to a painting that had a black man as a central figure, and that kind of like opened her possibilities, right? Street art and graffiti can do the same thing. If students see that kind of work around them, if they see it brought into their school and reframed in an academic way, that totally opens their mind to the opportunity that this is a valid art form, that this is and can be academic. So now I'd like to show you some more examples of how I put those needs from the beginning into action in my school. And yes, you're going to see more pictures of my adorable students. So again, the need of students with their self-worth, and the way that I addressed it, talking really explicitly about the gender gap, talking explicitly about cultural expectations of women, and then providing them a strong female role model, the artist Meg Zaney, with her autodidactic ambitions. When the students were able to see an artist creating work about the kinds of themes that they were struggling with in the first place, opened this whole new world to them. They started talking about it on their own. Oh, here. So here's some pictures from the project that we did with Meg Zaney. She does stencil work. You can see her, this is her up here with pink hair, can't miss her. With her stencil here, applying it to our wall. But she also does a lot of wheat paste. So the students created their own like mini wheat paste posters, and Meg Zaney brought in the wheat paste. We just used wallpaper paste, it worked just as well. And they added their own little wheat paste poster. The theme of the mural was kind of aspirations for yourself in the future, reflecting on how Meg Zaney's work has a really strong feminism quality to it, and kind of a lot of the students were inspired to do similar themes in their own work. And this piece still is up. It's really lovely because it's right at the top of the 8th grade stairs. So the students are 8th graders now, and every time they get to go up the stairs, they get to like walk by their piece, and it's kind of like wishing them well on their future. It's kind of lovely. Another need that I had identified, student-to-student relationships were negative. We had a lot of fighting. We had a lot of students refusing to work together. It was almost getting to the point where it was affecting their like actual quality of work because the relationships were too much for them to handle. So I brought in one of our school counselors who did a whole conflict resolution piece with the kids. They created like how-to posters with those kinds of themes. We developed community agreements for our classroom. How do you want to be treated? How do you want to be treating other people? And practicing and celebrating kind actions. With a local artist called Teacher, he came in. Here, let me actually go to this guy. So again, our mission was to address peer-to-peer relationships. We did this through the list of actions, and it was effective because this permanent piece in the school is now like a selfie backdrop. So step 2, I made the effort to contact the artist Teacher. I did so because he is a part of the community. He has little kids himself, so when he heard about the opportunity to work with kids, he was even extra excited because he has kids of his own and wants to pass on that influence or reflection. And I engaged with them, as in him, by DMing him on Instagram. And we had together planned, before he came in, I taught the students how to use the X-Acto knives, which took way longer than I expected. You're literally like holding it upside down, like scratching it back and forth, like, no! But we did a material demo before he came in to make sure that they were prepared, make sure that they knew what they were going to do as to not waste his time. And he and I worked together to develop kind of the theme of the mural. And I know it's kind of hard to see, but if you look at the black faces versus the red or the blue, it spells out be kind, period. And then he just added the we rise by lifting others at the end. That was his own little extra flourish in the moment, spontaneity, which I thought was really fitting. And as far as documenting, he actually brought a photographer with him, and I found that this is kind of common. There are a lot of photographers that kind of exist in the graffiti and street art subculture because the work is so elusive and it might only last for a few days before it gets buffed. The photography and documentation of this work is such an integral and important part of it. So a lot of times they have connections. They might know the photographer that they've worked with. They might have a friend. They might be willing to photograph the work themselves. And like getting that work documented, sharing it with your community so everybody knows what's going on is a really, really important step. And it makes the kids feel like rock stars. Be like, guys, we got a photographer today. They're all excited. They're like, Miss, don't tell me. And the last need that I addressed was that students didn't feel a very strong connection to the school. We worked on team building. We created a collaborative work. This one's different because the 2 murals before, if you think about it, students created a small piece that we added to the whole. Rather than, I'm gonna paint over here, now I'm gonna paint over here, now we're painting on each other. Now it's really, truly collaborative. So making sure that this was a piece that students were working in and on and around each other the whole time was really, really important when we were designing this piece. And focusing on the power of togetherness. And that was our Thrash bird mural. Look, see, his face isn't covered. Students painted this in my classroom, and I gotta be perfectly honest with you, this one, we didn't plan up front as much as we did with the others. This is the first one that I did, and I learned my lesson the hard way. I did not plan the logistics of the day. We had no plan. I had 3 buckets of paint left over from something else. We were like, let's use this. And he kind of took the lead on it. And I think while it was really important and awesome for the kids to see his process as it was happening, it was also so stressful, and I would not recommend it. So it really has to do with like what you're comfortable with. If you're more fly by the seat of your pants kind of teacher, then maybe this is something that will work for you. However, I found it to be a lot more organized, a lot more calm. Everyone knew what they were doing when we followed steps like this in the process. So again, I developed 3 needs in my community, but we did address the gender gap for cultural expectations of women. They had a strong female role model come in. We did go through conflict resolution, we developed community agreements, and we did create a mural that represents the ideas of kindness through the students. And we did create a kind of collaborative work focusing on the power of togetherness. Ooh. So, I'm sorry. It says strength in solidarity. That was the message that he added at the last minute. Focusing again on togetherness, coming together, solidarity, one mission. So when you create permanent large-scale artwork in your school, students feel as if they've left a legacy. They feel a stronger connection to that school just inherently. They can walk by a mural and be like, I had something to do with that. I have left my physical mark on this school. People will never forget me. I am the best, and no one will ever forget it. And this makes a really long-lasting impact for the students. They will come back, they will see the work, they will be reminded of what it represents and what that experience was for them. So the last big question that we have, I'm doing okay on time, right? Yeah. Is like, why? Why is it important for students to meet and collaborate with artists? And these are kind of reflections from my community. I conducted interviews with the people in my community, and I just want to show you what they have to say, because obviously everyone takes away something a little different. This is from a past 7th grader, she's in 8th grade now, Jasmine. She says, well, I think collaborations of all kind are important. When it comes to art, most people only want to see the final product. We often neglect those behind-the-scenes hours of effort to hone the skills needed to create a piece. When the artist works directly with youth, students' perspectives shift and they're able to see the greater value in art and its process because they're given the opportunity to take part in the process themselves. I didn't edit that at all. I'm so proud. A parent, Ms. Garcia, who's the mother of one of my current students and one of my students from last year. I think it is important because it inspires students just to be true to themselves. Just like the artists are unique, so are our students. It helps them express themselves, sometimes better than words can. Artists show the kids that anything is possible. How beautiful. Mr. Chavez, one of my colleagues, a resource teacher, reflected that the world is very small for a lot of our children. All they know is how their parents bring food to the table. However, when meeting with artists, their world becomes a lot bigger, and the possibilities of being much more in life other than just working to pay their bills becomes clear to them. My vice principal, Mr. Shabazz, said, it is important for our students to meet and collaborate with professional artists because seeing a career in action provides evidence of a pathway to success that they otherwise may not consider. Our work as educators is to prepare our students for college and career. Given that the vast majority of the students in our community would be the first in their families to go to college, they may miscategorize art as outside the realm of academic pursuit. Seeing professional artists create and talk about art in a precise and academic way makes the lessons they learn in their middle school setting come alive in a visceral way. They get to see that art is not merely play, but a serious and precise profession, on the same plane as engineering or accounting. Furthermore, it is a profession that is open to them. I also asked the questions to the 3 artists that I had coming in. I'm gonna let you read it. He actually had us make second prints of the stencils that we used for our mural. He had a show like on Melrose, which is a very well-known arts district in LA, and an entire wall was just filled with my student portraits. So he had a mini art show for us, which was very unexpected, and that's another beautiful kind of extra bonus of working with artists like this. And from Thrashford. So mysterious. I took all of the interviews and reflections. There were many more than the ones I showed you, and I put them into a Wordle just to kind of see what were trends in the language that people were using. A lot of the things that stuck out: opportunity, experience, provides, community, world, career, create, see, future, important, communities, perspectives. So obviously, these kinds of experiences impact a lot more than just our students and just the teachers. It has a really wide reach to people that you might not expect, and a lasting reach as well. So I'd like to give you some time to put this into action yourselves. Using the sheet, start thinking about some of the needs, even simple ones that you see in your classroom, and maybe starting to go through some of the steps yourselves in just a second. Just so you're aware, this handout that I've given you is also available on my website under the Educators tab. It's time for number 4, artclass.com. You hit Educators, and then it's right there, amongst a bunch of other helpful art historical references and media references, etc. And thank you very much. If you have any questions, please let me know. Reach out. I'm very active on